Okay, so what if the pyramids were not just for like burying like Egyptian pharaohs, right? Because when you think about it, right, they had like these very large structures, right? And the original pyramids were covered in like Tura limestone, which is like this very white limestone, very white, very highly reflective. So they created this giant thing. So why would somebody build like a structure that is very large like that and covered in like white limestone, knowing that Egypt is like, you know, is very close to the equator and there's a lot of sunlight there, right? So why would they make that? Why, right? So I think one of the reasons they might have done that, I think the pyramids was used for a lot of things actually, but I think one of the things it might have been used for was like a weather machine of some sort, right? So Egypt is in like in a desert, like in a desert, if you will, right? So it was kind of like hot, right? So how do you keep Egypt cool? At least maybe not the whole of Egypt, but the places where people lived, right? Right? How do you do that? How do you keep it cool? And how do you ensure that the Nile is like constantly like the Nile doesn't dry up and everybody's like, you know, keep like a very nice climate essentially, make it conducive for people to live in? Well, structures, right? One way to do it would be to like, I don't know, build a pyramid, a very large pyramid, right? And then cover that pyramid in a very reflective with a very reflective substance like a Tura limestone, right? So that when the sunlight hits the pyramid, you reflect the sunlight back to the sun, and that makes the surrounding environments like very cooler, right? The whole concept is called the albedo effect, essentially. So they could have done that, right? To just keep like everywhere cool, at least the places where people lived, right? So they made everything like very very cool. Do you understand? And that would also make sure that the Nile was always like wasn't threatened by desertification or drying up. Do you understand? And the things that they planted around the pyramid, all the crops that they planted around it, would they would grow. It's just like a form of it's like a giant. The pyramids are like giant weather machines essentially. So it just hits me today that And then on top of the pyramids again, they put this very shiny, this golden shiny thing on top of it. It's just like it just looks like a very very a big weather machine. Do you understand? And it makes sense because during the 10 plagues, right, God literally threatened them with darkness. One of the plagues was darkness. It was like, you know what, I'm going to throw your country into darkness, and you won't see anything. And that was one of like the later plagues. It was one of the. So why would God like threaten them with darkness? Because their whole economy was based on light, which makes sense with the whole Ra thing. Ra is like the god of sunlight. Because if you take away all the light, it means that, well, there's no pyramids anymore to reflect the sunlight, which means, well, the weather is going to get very hot. So they were not only during that plague of darkness, they were not only in darkness, they were also in heat. Like they were cooking inside Egypt at that point, right? Because it was the sunlight that kept Egypt cool via the pyramids, right? And which is why how would you think about it? How would you sell as a king? How would you convince the economy to like take taxpayers' money to build this giant structure? How would you do it? Like, you can't just say, oh, it's because of you can't. You can't. One way to do it would be to convince them that one way not to do it is to tell them that you are taking taxpayers' money to like build this like giant structure for your resting place, for the resting place of a king, a giant tomb. They probably won't be so happy to like work on it, no matter how religious they were, right? But if they knew that the giant structure you are building was to keep the country cool and help the economy and make sure the crops will grow and all these other things, there's a high chance that they might have bought into it. Do you understand? So I believe I think the pyramid served like more than one purpose, right? I think one of the other purposes it served was the albedo effect, like I said, keeping Egypt cool, at least places where people lived, keeping it cool, making sure crops that were planted in those areas, That's ensured that it's a lush heaven, essentially making Egypt a lush heaven, right? So I just wanted to God just like revealed it to me, and I just wanted to I just wanted to like put it down here so I don't forget it. So that's it. So I believe the pyramids were like giant weather machines. Let's go. Oh, and Merry Christmas.